What is the difference between knowing when to let something go and just going through things with each other so that way you can end up on the other side and have that long-term relationship and marriage together? Every situation is different. I think that you need to learn the difference between what is your boundary, what is abuse, and all of that in order to answer that question. But when it comes down to the situation with Melanie and Derwin, I feel like Melanie knew what her capacity was. At the end of the day, she wanted Derwin. And I feel like Derwin wanted Melanie. And so I feel like whoever you do decide to be with, you have to make that decision together. Just because you guys started when you were in high school and college doesn't mean you have to end up with each other for the rest of your life. You guys served that purpose at that time, and that's okay. Welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast, where we discuss real topics through the lens of some of the most iconic figures in our culture. I'm your host, Lauren A. So I'm fresh off vacation, you guys. I'm ready to pod. It's so funny because over the weekend, me and my friends were having this conversation about how people are meeting each other. Like, seriously, in this day and age, it's kind of like a real mystery as to how people are actually meeting each other, falling in love with each other, and, actually staying together. Like, is that a real thing? Well, I do know that there are many couples out there who are actually finding each other and falling in love. I just was curious about the actual statistics of it all. Like, what are the numbers, So I took it upon myself to do a slight study, and I looked up kind of the statistics on how people are actually meeting each other and dating, like how couples are forming in today's age. So I looked up this research study, and according to not.com, the website where people can, search for registries, and, if you guys are getting married, you can put your registry on there, or you can put up a website for the wedding, stuff like that. So not.com did a study, and they said that here are the top 5 ways people are actually meeting each other. So it's no surprise that number 1 is actually online dating. Like, that's a thing. We all understand that there are several dating apps out there. You got Bumble and Match and Hinge and Tinder and all the things. And instead of, just like your mama and your grandma did, meeting, your grandfather at a school dance or something like that, people are now trading in-person meeting for online dating. It's fast, it's convenient, it's all the things. So that is at number 1, especially amongst Gen Zers. That is the number 1 way that they are actually dating each other. Number 2 is, surprisingly still, through mutual friends, right? So a friend of a friend, I got a homegirl, I got a homeboy who would be perfect for you, that type of thing. Number 3 on that list was at school. And I found this still surprising because, in our minds, we think that these people are not even talking to each other in school, right? Whether that's high school or even in college. I would say more so college. This study mostly reflected more so on college or graduate school. So we'll go there, right? So number 3 is people actually meeting in college. Number 4 is still at work, right? Which is kind of no surprise. You spend a majority of your time there, especially if it's full time, 40 hours a week, maybe even more at work. So you're bound to kind of bump into somebody and meet your match there. And lastly, at number 5 is actually just socially. So that means you going to the Publix or, going to a party or a bar. These social kind of settings is the last place, or 5th place out of the top 5 where you're actually meeting your match these days. Okay. So that study it didn't blow me away. It was kind of expected, but it almost just validated kind of like how we were all feeling these days about how we're actually going to meet our match. It's not something that's just serendipitous like it is in the movies, where you're expecting to meet your partner in a grocery store or whatever the case may be. But no, times have changed to where it's more digitized or even more of a controlled setting. But the whole point of this episode is not really just about where you're finding your match. It's about my theories about these sorts of relationships. So I have my own theories about, what actually makes some of these relationships work and what doesn't. So I want to talk to you guys about that. I want to shed light on number 3. Okay. So number 3 is school. Currently, about 15% of couples today meet in school. College sweethearts is something like a storybook tale, right? Like you meet your guy, you meet your girl, you guys bumped into each other, dropped your books and, in the middle of the Colony Square, and then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, let me get that for you. And then you grab the book, and then y'all guys lock eyes, and then like, well, what classes are you going to? Is it in this hall? I'm actually headed there. Can I walk you? That kind of a thing. Something that you see in the corny TV movie. Maybe that's just me and my brain and how it works. But I always envisioned something like that happening, and I actually did have a somewhat of a similar kind of romance pop off that way. But I digress. But in this situation, one of the good things about meeting your spouse or your long-term partner in college is that you guys most likely came up during a time where you were both in your ugly phase. Okay. Whether you were, came from different towns and decided to meet up at the school, just randomly, or you guys are in the same town and you meeting up at the school, and maybe you guys knew each other from high school, maybe you didn't. But the point is that you are entering a place in a time in your life where you're learning more about each other. You're learning more about yourself. You're able to kind of like, deal with roommates or, live on your own. And you're kind of gaining that experience of just growing and developing into an adult, right? You're going to classes. Nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody's telling you really how to do it. And you are figuring things out. And so in that period, in that interim between adolescence and adulthood, you're in this space of self-development, but also a phase of curiosity. And when you meet an individual who sparks your interest, whether it's just through physical lust or you guys actually have similar interests, that romance is kind of heightened just by this shared experience you're having in school. And so, you guys are going through similar experiences together, these same kind of like milestones of young adulthood together, that the bond that you actually end up sharing, and for the most part, is very strong. And so I almost envied the ones who were able to stumble upon this experience, to have the luxury of this experience of maybe starting a romance in college and carrying it through that experimental phase, that figuring things out, what career trajectory you want, where you want to live, that phase together. And then afterwards being able to kind of still expand on it and evolve together. So that's the beauty, I would say, of a college romance. Unfortunately, though, there are some pitfalls of this romance. And a particular story that kind of shows the aftermath of the college sweetheart is one of my favorite shows, definitely of all time, created by the wonderful and amazing Mara Brock-Akil, which right now is basically buzzing through social media with her new story called Forever on Netflix. But she, back in the day, she did help create a show, a classic show titled The Game, that really kind of highlighted the story of two individuals who found each other in college, were college sweethearts, but it also carried over and the story developed after they left college. And so I want to dive deep into this story. Previously, I did an episode. If you have not already, check it out. It was about Kelly Pitts and her story in The Game. But I really wanted to shed light on Melanie and Derwin's relationship. We see how naive they were coming out of college and kind of into this world of professional football, and what does that mean to even be a professional football player and the girlfriend to a professional football player, right? So with the newfound fame that Darren was experiencing, whether it was the media kind of shining a light on him and his newfound success, whether it was the hazing that he was going through with the football players kind of as a rookie and kind of getting his footing on a team, whether it was the groupies that, discovered how attractive he was and wanted to take pictures and be by his side, all the things that come with a new and popular professional career. And so Melanie, as the girlfriend, had to find her footing, being kind of the shadow and in the spotlight with Derwin. Did she have to be able to accept the groupies being around him, being amongst the sunbeams, and kind of, being that backbone and charitable, putting on a face with the women that she doesn't even know? Like all of that kind of comes along with being a player's girlfriend.
Okay, all rookies, listen up. Here are the rules to assigned seating. You sit in the seat to which you are assigned. Girl, why aren't you gathering your things?
That was directed at me?
Is your ass warming up seat 13?
Oh, I'm sorry. During the preseason, the wives and the girlfriends can sit anywhere in the box.
Well, this is the first game of the real season, so get your real ass in your real seat.
And when you were a person who was in medical school and having the center of attention be around you and your advancement and, the spotlight of you being a medical doctor, and going from that to the fame and the attention shifting to your partner more so than you, that could be an issue, right? And it was for Melanie. And I think with any kind of relationship, whether one of them is famous or not, finding out who you are after college is hard for anyone, relationship or not. So throwing in a relationship on top of that, where you guys don't really have that shared experience of school to kind of fall back on, you have to develop your own legs in real time and with each other, right? And that may even happen at different paces. So what Melanie was experiencing was his trajectory was going a lot further than hers at the very moment. She gave up her ability to go to medical school to follow him to being a professional athlete in Los Angeles. Was that something that she should have done? I'm not quite sure. You can, have your own opinion about it. Me personally, I wouldn't have done it, but I know that has a lot to do with the promise of marriage. If let's say we've gone through 4 years of school together and all these, like I said, milestone experiences, and then we know we're probably going to be together in the end, she felt that it was a safe bet to be able to do that because the outcome was going to be worth it. But essentially, whenever in a relationship where one sacrifices something pretty large for the other person, I don't care what anybody says, I feel like there's always a little bit of resentment that develops as a result. And whether that resentment is on purpose or, kind of like an insidious creeps up on you type thing, who knows? But it does develop. And you have to kind of check yourself to figure out, why did I sacrifice this thing? Did I truly want to sacrifice this thing? Or did I just do it just to save face or just to seem like a supportive partner? You know what I'm saying? Because in Melanie's case, that was like a huge glooming cloud over the relationship initially, was how much she did sacrifice for her to be there and for him to not necessarily put her first in every situation and put football first. And so now she's resentful of the whole thing. She's like, well, I did this. Why are you treating me this way? I did this. You shouldn't be, putting me second. I did this. And so ultimately, that resentment just builds and builds and builds. And then you have, some discourse in your relationship. And unfortunately, that's where the cracks develop and things can kind of slip through those cracks. One setback that I think that happens in like relationships that start at a young age is that you end up growing apart just based off of your own maturation in life. It's one thing for you to mature a little bit from 25 or 30 to 35, right? I'm not the same person I was when I was, in my late 20s as I am in my 30s. And it's small differences, right? Just maybe another boundary has developed, or I might be a little bit more lax in some areas because I just don't care or just don't have the energy to give to every situation. But I feel like those are small little things, but my personality is relatively the same. But when you are 18 years old and you're with someone and it carries over to the age of 28, you are highly likely to be a different individual. And I feel like it takes a strong couple to kind of overcome that, to kind of see the differences in each other, maybe kind of go in the right direction with each other. You can still mature, but go in the same direction, as opposed to maybe splitting and going in different directions. Now, if you're a fan of the show, you absolutely know why they broke up. And we know it's to this day, even Drew Sidora doesn't get any slack on on her breaking up Melanie and Derwin. When I first saw this scene back in 2006 or 7, when that show came out, that was heartbreaking. Melanie and Derwin, we were rooting for their relationship from the get-go. It was a relationship that we actually saw ourselves in just by how down to earth they were. Derwin was just a good upbringing, good family, good trajectory, kind, funny, goofy. Like, we all dated a Derwin Davis. If you didn't date a guy like him, then you wanted to date a guy like him, especially if you was a corny girl like me. Like, I was corny. I wanted to date a Derwin. And then with him going into the league too, like, that was just an extra, that was like a plus. And then Melanie was very relatable. She was down to earth. She was in med school. She was smart. She kind of gave Derwin kind of like, a tit for tat. She was, funny and goofy too. And they felt like they were friends, which I think that a lot of couples unfortunately miss, especially if you don't start in college or at a younger age. You don't develop that friendship first, to where it wasn't just developed on lust, it was developed on a true friendship, and then it turned into a relationship or a marriage. And I felt like when Derwin decided to cheat on Melanie with Drew Sidora, it was heartbreaking. Because not only did you see the shattering of the relationship in front of your eyes, you saw the friendship being broken. You saw the heartbreak that Melanie had in her eyes when she discovered the infidelity, because you saw, hey, I sacrificed this to be here. Hey, you were a large part of my life, and I devoted a lot of time to this. Hey, you got me out here looking crazy trying to fit in with these girls and this lifestyle that I'm not even really accustomed to, while you're doing me dirty in the back end. Like, you saw all of this hurt in her eyes and in her speech, which was kind of funny, by the way. And so you were heartbroken too as a viewer, to just see that ideal relationship kind of crumble. Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So, of course, over the seasons, over the next season, you see Derwin and Melanie break up, maybe try to get back together. Because one thing, again, about that relationships that starts when they're younger is the longevity part of it, right? We've been together for so long and gone through so many of these pivotal experiences together that I don't particularly know what life is like without you here. Like, I spoke about this in the past about going back to the person or circling the block with the person primarily because that is their norm. And it's one thing for you to just meet a person Y'all have like a surface level conversation. That's why I feel like, the advantage versus disadvantages of like online dating. You haven't developed that cachet enough with the person when you meet them online, and you kind of have surface level conversations, and then possibly go on a date or two, and then it kind of trickles into something. And there's been successful relationships that come from that, obviously, just based on the statistics, right? Most of the relationships come from online dating. But it's different when you develop that cachet where it was like over time building and through different stages of your life. And then so those type of relationships, I feel, would be harder to kind of like break off, as opposed to the ones that may start a bit more superficially and then maybe trickle into something major after a while. We saw how difficult it was for Melanie and Derwin to kind of like stay apart from each other, or not just have that urge to get back to with each other, but unfortunately the situation was so big and embarrassing for Melanie. It was hard for her to even really consider getting back with him. And we saw even just, her being kicked out of the lifestyle, quote unquote, of the football player girlfriend was an adjustment for her. The friendships, right? Kelly and Natasha, things like that. That even shifted a little bit until they were able to be like, hey, we're still friends after this. But initially it was like, well, you're not a sunbeam because you're not together with him, and so that was essentially a hard thing to digest too. Will your lifestyle change, after being with this person for so long? So Melanie was an interesting character because she was a total contradiction. She was a complete contradiction to herself, because on one hand, she wanted her own identity as a doctor and kind of her own mind and things like that. And on the other hand, she wanted to be a part of the Sunbeams and want to be a part of Derwin's life and want to be a part of his success, like Melanie. Get it together. What do you want to do? What you want to do? And another thing that stands out and which we all remember is her relationships after Derwin. Going back to the longevity of being with someone as college sweethearts, and then kind of breaking up after the fact as an adult, you may not have that many experiences with other people. So like, for example, like when it comes down to just talking and flirting and like getting to know somebody else, you might laugh at an inside joke that you and that other person had while y'all was still together, or a reference that new person doesn't even get because they don't even know what you're talking about, right? Or even just the simple fact that you have a stuffed animal that your ex gave you that's hanging out in your room, and your new guy or your new girl asks about it. It's just like all those little things that kind of tie you back to that past experience makes it even harder to get over. Even sexually, nobody even talks about the person who comes after your ex that you were with for a long period of time. Who is the first sexual encounter after that person? Is it somebody that you like? Is it somebody that you care about? Is it somebody who you really just want to pacify you and to make you feel wanted because you were rejected with the last relationship? You see what I'm saying? Like, even that gets deep. And so I feel like with Melanie's situation, while it was laughable that she was attempting to sleep with Troy, what's his name? Trey, the other football player, whatever the case may be. And it was funny, but it was a real thing for her to even, her body probably felt even nervous being with another man when she was with one man for so long. And these are the elements of breakups that nobody really talks about. Everybody wants to go and be like, well, cut him off, cut her off. I'm a ghost. I'm the wind. Yeah, my cutoff game strong. All of that foolishness, right? But when it comes down to a long-term relationship that was fairly healthy for majority of the relationship, or even maybe not even healthy, because people just, you know, you don't even have to be that. It can just be the experiences and connections that these people shared, can make it very difficult to even move on to the next person. So whether you're using the next person as a rebound and a pacifier, that's your prerogative, right? To help you kind of heal. However, if it comes at the expense of somebody's feelings, somebody's true feelings, like it did with Trey, that can be hurtful. I don't particularly, agree or encourage using of other people to help you get over your ex. I just don't agree with that. I just don't, think that it's fair. If that person agrees with the situation, like kind of know where you are, and it's like, hey, I know you just got over your ex, but I'm here for you, and we just gonna do what we do. That's a different conversation because you're two grown consensual adults, right? But I feel like if it's one person who may have more feelings, or just curious to see where it goes, or just a little bit more feelings towards that other person, and the other person is just using them to kind of like pacify their pain, I don't necessarily agree with that, because I just feel like karma might circle back and hit you in the ass. So you just don't want to do that. But in that situation, I'm glad that Melanie kind of cut it off before it got a little bit too deep for Troy. Or Trey. I keep calling him Troy. I think his name was Trey Wiggs, right? Because homeboy was paying for her school now. Like he was paying tuition. So I'm pretty sure he thought that it was going to develop into something a little bit more than what she thought. Because once money gets involved, that's where, I'm pretty sure feelings were really there. So ultimately, the situation with Melanie trying to find herself, it was needed, because honestly and truly too, after a breakup for that long, whether the guy or the girl, them being able to kind of see how they navigate the world without that other person, I think that's actually can be very healthy. I truly believe you rediscovering who you are without the plus, Melanie and Derwin, Melanie and Troy, Melanie and, like, it's like, okay, who are you by yourself with yourself? Like, how does that even look? Are you comfortable with how that looks? Are you comfortable with navigating the world on your own and figuring things out? I'm not saying you have to be single for a long period of time in between relationships, but I think it is healthy for you to be able to develop your own life experiences without another person as a plus. So that way you can say, whether they're there or not, I can still stand on my own. It's a lot that goes along with a woman or a man deciding to look over transgression after transgression for the sake of forgiveness, because they want them in their life. And I think that in their relationship, she did her best to look over transgressions, but then ultimately kind of kept that resentment at bay, and it kind of like still impacted their relationship. But I mean, who wouldn't, right? I mean, ultimately it would take some real get on your knees praying and real self-work and real, spiritual release and all that good stuff, some gemstones, some amethyst, whatever you need to be able to release that resentment for a person that kind of continuously makes mistakes, and you have to kind of put up with it in order to have them in your life. That's a strong individual. I don't know if I'm that kind of person, but Melanie was that girl. Mara Brockerkill did her thing when she really set up the development of these characters and had you fall in love with them and want to root for them, but still wanted to like, why do you keep putting each other through this? And it makes it hard for you guys to get back together when y'all guys keep making stupid mistakes. But I have a question for you guys, because I battle with this after repeat watching in this show. is, do you think that Melanie deserved Derwin back, or do you think that Derwin deserved Melanie back after the baby? Either one, right? Did she deserve Derwin after kind of like nagging and kind of like constantly bringing up and resenting Derwin for the person that he was, almost even wanting to change him or to, make all of his transgressions just go away? Do you feel that she deserved him back, or do you feel that he deserved her back after continuously just doing things that messed up the relationship or just made it more difficult? Right? The baby mama, the cheating on with Juicidora, the, anger issues that he had when she was with other guys, like all the things, the medical school stuff. Like, what do you think about that? Because I don't know. I think their relationship was a little bit low-key toxic, a little bit at times. But I think maybe it was just growing pains of them just trying to figure it out as they were getting older with all this fame and stuff. So let me know what you guys think. I don't know. I'm curious. Ultimately, what I do feel like we could take away from the Melanie and Derwin relationship is just how love can conquer all. I really do think that in today's society, we do give up a little too easy for the sake of peace. And as I think her name is Raquel, the therapy expert, she's online. I love her videos, but she made mention about the difference between protecting your peace and running from life. Right? Are we doing a poor job of actually developing healthy boundaries and actually developing resilience? As opposed to just removing ourselves from every little thing that brings us some kind of discomfort, instead of building the capacity to deal with life. And I love her outlook. I would love to have her on the show one day, someday. But I love her outlook on that because I think that actually includes relationships too. What is the difference between knowing when to let something go and just going through things with each other so that way you can end up on the other side and have that long-term relationship and marriage together? Like, what is the difference? And I feel like that's an individual response. I think every situation is different. I think that you need to learn the difference between what is your boundary, what is abuse, and all of that in order to answer that question. But when it comes down to the situation with Melanie and Derwin, I feel like Melanie knew what her capacity was. At the end of the day, she wanted Derwin. And I feel like Derwin wanted Melanie. And whether they made stupid mistakes in the end, they had to figure out, hey, regardless of what we went through, I want to do life with you. And making that decision together carried them on and throughout the show. And I feel like that was their decision to make. And so I feel like whoever you do decide to be with, you have to make that decision together. If one person doesn't want to continue on and kind of like be able to spread their wings outside of this long-term relationship that, started when you were younger, but doesn't fulfill them at an adult age, that's okay. Just because you guys started when you were in high school and college doesn't mean you have to end up with each other for the rest of your life. You guys served that purpose at that time, and that's okay. But if you also decide to say, hey, I found my person who I want to do life with, then hey, that's a blessing too. And regardless of what you guys go through, you'll go through it together and you'll come out better on the other side. So kudos to Melanie and Derwin. I definitely missed that show, The Game, on TV. I missed that version of The Game on TV. And, if they're going to come back, please don't. Let it be. Let it rest. It was a classic. Let it be what it was. Let us reference it and let us go back and see it again on DVD. Let it sit there, okay? Because I think if you bring it back, if you try to recreate that magic, it's just only going to mess it up. So let it be the classic that it is. So that brings us to the end of the episode. Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's good to see y'all. Hopefully you guys enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend and all enjoying the summertime and all the good stuff like that. And I'm definitely going to see you guys next time. And of course, you cannot manifest anything you feel like you don't deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye-bye.